on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and my guest today is director Matthew Ross, and we're going to be talking about his brand new movie, Siberia, which stars Keanu Reeves. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I really enjoyed this movie, so I want to get into it on a much deeper level. But before we get started with that, I always like to ask my guests, how did you get started in this business?
How did I get started in this business? Well, making films is... I grew up in New York City at a time when art house cinemas were everywhere, and I was a very lucky beneficiary of that access to great movies at a very young age, shown and seen and listened to in the way they were supposed to be shown, seen, and listened to. Mm-hmm. So I can really credit my mom for taking me to go see Hitchcock movies, Polanski movies, some of the all-time classics, High Noon, Westerns, when I was really, really young at movie theaters. One of them was just a couple blocks away, the Regency Movie Theater on the Upper West Side, which is where I grew up. So I got to see all these movies in a movie theater, and I quite honestly can't remember a time when I didn't want to become a filmmaker. But getting there, of course, is a whole different story. My first film was called Frank and Lola, which took me ages to get made, 8 years to be exact. And I'd written the script for that while I was still a film journalist, interviewing directors, covering the business, assigning pieces as the managing editor of Filmmaker magazine, and freelancing for a lot of other places. But the whole time I was just planning on the right moment to take the leap into directing, and I finally did that when I was around 30 years old in 2006, and I had great producers for a script that I really believed in, and it took another 8 years for that film to get made. So I guess I got into the business by sheer force of will, and I guess at times one could consider a somewhat delusional optimism that things would work out. I just never gave up.
I think that's what you need when we're in this kind of business. Delusional optimism. I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Okay, thanks.
It's a very good word. Excellent. 2 words, I should say. So tell us a little bit about Frank and Lola.
Well, Frank and Lola, it was originally written, it was a very personal story, certainly in its earliest incarnations, and it was based on a relationship I'd had with somebody who had undergone something extremely traumatizing recently, before we'd met. And the exact story of what had happened to her was very complicated and incredibly painful, and had a profound effect on our relationship, and more so, of course, on her. And it was something that I felt I wanted to explore a little bit more as a story. And with her blessing, I began writing a script about a couple who meet and fall in love, but are thwarted in their attempts to move forward with the relationship because of the trauma that she had endured right before they had met. And then, of course, years and years go by. I mature both as a writer and as a young man, and it became more nuanced. And I'm not sure, at certain points along the way, of course, the original, kernel of the idea was there, but it became very much its own story and its own animal, much more so than simply a retelling of true events or anything like that.
It's described, you described it as a psychosexual noir love story. So describe what a psychosexual noir love story is.
Well, it's part love story, it's part thriller. It's a story about obsession, male obsession, really, about a character named Frank, played by Michael Shannon, who becomes obsessed with a man from his girlfriend's past. His girlfriend is Lola, played by the wonderful Imogen Poots. And he becomes driven to track this man down and inflict revenge on what she's told him about what happened to her and him before they got together.
Ooh, very exciting, very interesting, intriguing. Where can people find this movie?
They can find it pretty much everywhere. iTunes, Amazon, the usual places. It's available on demand.
Great. So now, when did that come out, Matthew? Frank and Lola?
That film premiered at Sundance in 2016, and then played the festival circuit that year and was released at the end of 2016, right before the end of the year.
Oh, so it's a very recent film then.
Yes.
Very recent.
Yes.
So it should be easy to find then, for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. So how did that experience, you directed that one, you wrote it and directed it. How did that experience lead you into your current movie, Siberia?
Well, I was lucky enough to have Keanu Reeves watch that film, and he really responded to it. And we are represented by the same agency. They showed him the film, and the next thing I know, I'm in New York, where I live, and meeting Keanu Reeves for a cup of coffee to talk about Frank and Lola, as well as this new project that he had called Siberia, which was an idea and a script that he had been developing for quite some time before he met me. I think he saw some similarities in Frank and Lola to Siberia in terms of its combination of love story and genre film, its attention to intimate detail, and before I knew it, we were making the movie. It was quite strange, to go from taking 8 years to get your first movie made to having your first movie come out in December and then be on prep on your next one, 2 months after that.
Amazing. This did move quickly, didn't it? Is it because of Keanu's attachment to the project?
Keanu's attachment does not hurt an independent film getting financing.
Not at all.
Not at all.
And it was tailor-made for him, I think, his character. So let's talk. So our listeners know what we're talking about. Why don't you give us a little bit of the storyline of Siberia?
Sure. In the film, Keanu plays a character named Lucas Hill, who's an American diamond merchant who operates sort of on the fringes of legality in the diamond trade, which is still quite the Wild West of professions. And the premise is that he is to go to St. Petersburg to meet his partner, who will have $50 million worth of rare blue diamonds from Siberia that they will then sell to a St. Petersburg oligarch named Boris Volkov. Except problems arise as soon as he shows up in St. Petersburg, when both his partner and their diamonds are missing. So he then has to go to Siberia to try to track down his partner, Pyotr, but he can't find him. Instead, he finds an intriguing, beautiful, captivating young woman that he meets at a local cafe and begins an affair with her, which is quite passionate and unexpected, and shakes him up to a pretty intense degree. But at the same time, he's got this very dangerous and very lucrative deal that he has to pay attention to. So he returns back to St. Petersburg, and as it turns out, there's some unfinished business in Siberia, and before he really can get a handle on what's happening, she is now involved in the diamond deal as well, and that's when things really get complicated for him.
And it does get complicated for sure. And we must note that he in Keanu's character is married, and Molly Ringwald plays his wife.
Yes.
Which was fun to see her on the screen again. It's been a while on the big screen.
Yes. Molly's terrific.
Yeah, and they had apparently Keanu and Molly had a good chemistry together because they kind of grew up in the industry and they understood each other very well? You want to share any stories?
It was a real trip because I mean Molly's been a friend of mine for a long time. Her and her husband Ponyo I've known for years, and when we were looking to cast the part, she just seemed like just a natural choice. Both as she was the right age. She's such a wonderful actress, and then of course there was kind of the added thrill of putting Keanu Reeves and Molly Ringwald together in a movie for the first time. I guess they had acted in a film, but they didn't share any scenes together. So to have these two actors who we sort of grew up watching in the 80s and 90s, act finally come together in 2017 was a treat.
It is a treat. It is a treat to see her on the screen again. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You're listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like The Jan Price Show on Facebook and check out thejanpriceshow.com. The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right. It's Mr. Sandless, the no sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is director Matthew Ross, and we're talking about his brand new movie, Siberia, which stars Keanu Reeves. Well, I heard in doing my research, or as I was doing my research, that one of the reasons Keanu was very interested in having you direct this film is because of your, obviously, what we talked earlier about Frank and Lola, the way that you handled some of the sexual scenes in Frank and Lola, and he thought the way you handled them was beautifully done. And in this film, there's quite a bit of passion and not to give away anything, but there is a lot of hot sex in this movie. I guess it's a selling point, actually, Matthew. So how is it? I mean, everybody wonders as we're viewers, watching these very hot, romantic, passionate sex scenes. How is it filming them?
For the intimate scenes or in general?
The intimate scenes.
He was a consummate professional, as he is with absolutely everything that he does when you're working with him. And as was, it takes two
right.
to create a love scene in a movie. And we had an absolutely astonishing co-star that he worked with named Anu Laru, a Romanian actress who is just a force of nature as a performer, as a person, as a friend. So yeah, I mean, it was actually quite a different process with Frank and Lola as opposed to Siberia, in the sense that Frank and Lola was my first film. When we shot Frank and Lola, it was also Imogen Poots' first nude scene that she had ever done. And as with all of these scenes, it's all about trust between the directors, the actors, and the crew at large. You need to really make sure that everybody feels 100% safe and is 100% comfortable the entire time. with Frank and Lola, it was we created an atmosphere that was as unfilmic and unmovie setish as we could possibly create. Up to and including me not even being in the room for that scene. Nor was our first assistant cameraman. The only people we had in the room for that scene were our boom operator and our DP, who was operating camera. I was sending him directions through an earpiece while he was shooting, and our focus puller was pulling focus from a monitor inside the bathroom, so as to really create an atmosphere that was as intimate and safe as possible, so that everybody felt as comfortable as we could. Given the fact that you're creating such an intimate moment with so many other people around, it's a very strange experience directing a love scene on camera, especially one that's sort of semi-explicit, which was the case in both of my films. In Siberia, it was we had a closed set. Only the necessary people that needed to be on the set were on the set, but we also had the advantage of Keanu, Anna, and I having spent a lot of time together before we shot the scene, workshopping the whole script sort of from beginning to end, including all of the love scenes in the film. And unlike Frank and Lola, which really has one, this one has three, and three intense ones. And we really demystified the process while we were rehearsing it, down to sort of what position they're in and what they're doing at what point. And it added a kind of humorous element to it so that nobody was taking anything very seriously by the time we shot it. So by the time shooting rolled around, we had a closed set, but it was the mood was quite light and sort of goofy and fun, which I thought was a very welcome situation for me because we could really relax. Those scenes are very stressful to make.
I can imagine.
They really are.
I can imagine that they are, and you hear different things, from actors over the years, about filming more sexually explicit scenes, and you wonder, you wonder, did they really do anything after that scene? How close were they? But when you hear,
none of my business.
That's right. Exactly. Nor mine either. Although we have had many romances that have taken place during a filming of a movie. We've heard.
It has been known to happen.
Yes, it has been known to happen through the years. But
I made it. We really made a point, and I started this with Frank and Lola, so I can use that as an example. I mean, when we called cut on the set, we turned the monitors around so that nobody could see what was going on. The point is to make a piece of art together. The point is not to watch two actors in various states of disrobe do anything but act. So in between takes, all that, that's none of my business, and nor is it anybody else's business. The only thing that matters is what we capture when we press action, in between action and cut. Everything else needs to be treated, maximum privacy needs to be observed. I think that is just an essential part of making these scenes correctly and maintaining the right atmospheres and maintaining the trust that you have between you and your actors. Because if you lose that, then you lose the movie.
Oh, yes, I definitely agree. I like the fact that you said, really, when you were doing Frank and Lola, that you hardly had anybody in the room with them. That's kind of fascinating.
Not even me.
Not even you as the director. So were you able to see what was going on, or just... Oh,
yes. Yes. No, I had a walkie-talkie with an earpiece, and my cinematographer, Eric Koretz, who also shot Siberia, was operating the camera. So I was feeding him instructions through a handheld monitor. I was watching what was happening, and then I was telling him what to do through an earpiece that he was listening to that the microphone wasn't able to pick up.
And how often, when you were doing the scene in Frank and Lola, how many retakes did you have to do?
You don't do those scenes very too many takes. 2 or 3 takes per setup maximum, unless there's some kind of major malfunction, because you're only going to get. You also want your actors to really go for it. And in Siberia, especially in some of the scenes, there's a real level of passion and intensity between your actors. And while of course they're professionals and they can come back and bring it every time, with a scene like with a love scene, you want to try to get it right on the first or second take.
I would think you would. I mean, then I think it's the law of diminishing returns maybe after that. Do you now in Siberia, because as you said, there's 3. Did you do them all at one time?
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No, they were all done according to the schedule of when we were in those locations.
Interesting.
I would never want to do those things all back to back to back. That would be just emotionally so draining, I think, for everybody. It's nice to have a little break.
Right, from the intensity of it, for sure.
Exactly.
Sure. So in this film, Keanu Reeves had to learn how to speak Russian, and he also learned how to handle the diamonds. But we're going to take a quick commercial break, and I'm going to have you answer that question when we get back. Oh, wait, no, I guess
Absolutely.
we're not. No, we're not going to take a quick commercial break. We'll continue with that. So go ahead.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about that process, about him learning Russian and also, learning how to handle the diamonds perfectly, because I didn't realize there was such an art to doing that too. So tell us a little bit about his process and how he did all of that.
Well, I didn't realize there was such an art to handling diamonds either until, props can really make or break a movie. That is a very true adage in the film business. With Keanu, one thing you never have to worry about with him is the level of preparation. So in terms of the Russian dialogue, he was practicing that for weeks, if not longer than that, before he even arrived in Canada to shoot those scenes. He had his own dialect coach, and he was working on every single line that he had, sort of with the obsessive perfectionism that he brings to everything that he does. And, when you're working with props on a movie, especially specific props that require a degree of expertise, where a character is portraying somebody who is an expert at what they're doing, you want to get your props to your actors as early as possible and with as much information as possible so that they can practice with them as well as give them the opportunity to talk to people about it. So we had, for the diamond work that he did, there's a scene in the film where he has to test several diamonds using a spectrometer, which involves taking a diamond off a piece of velvet, holding it up to his eye, and then placing it very carefully in a crystal enclosure inside a computer, which will then analyze the diamond. Doing that with a diamond and having it land properly on the velvet so that you can pick it up time after time is not easy. So Keanu, I know, just spent hours alone in his room at the time practicing his work with tweezers, with a loop, with the computer spectrometer that we were working on, so that when we film that scene, it really looks like he's done this, 1,000 times before, because that's what the scene requires. Plus, when you're shooting a movie, you have wider shots and close-ups, and your scenes have to match. So the diamond has to fall. You want to get it to fall in the right place so that you can match it to a closer shot. It's harder than we thought. There's always things on a movie that are way harder than you initially thought they would be when you're reading the script or planning it out. You think that if you get, if you're just very well prepared and have the right props people and everything looks right, and you can communicate stuff to an actor early and often, that's all you need. But sometimes it's even more complicated.
Yeah, what looks simple on a page does not always work out simply when you're actually filming. So now we are going to take a commercial break. Matthew, we'll be right back. You're listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like The Jan Price Show on Facebook and check out thejanpriceshow.com.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have the desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled with luxury loungers in every auditorium. Oversized plush recliners are electric-powered reclining seats with extendable footrests, cup holders, and snack tables. Guaranteed comfort with all reserved seating. Reserve the best seat in town online at Cinemark.com or download the Cinemark app today. The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is director Matthew Ross, and we're talking about his brand new movie, Siberia, starring Keanu Reeves. What was the most difficult scenes for you to film, other than the sex scenes?
I would say the most challenging scene as a director to shoot probably was, there's a scene where there's a bear hunt in the film. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you've seen the film or not, but
yes,
I
have.
So it's Keanu in the woods with 4 scary Russian brothers. They give him a gun. There's live animals. There's a man in a bear suit. There's gunshots in between each take that you shoot all those guns. You have to have a gun checker around to reload each gun personally and check it for safety, and there's 6 people shooting. I think we had 7 hours all in to shoot that entire sequence. That was a challenge for sure, just in terms of time. There's so many different factors. And we were shooting it in, sub-zero weather in one of the coldest places in the world. That was a challenge. That's up there.
Where did you shoot it again?
We shot all of the interior St. Petersburg scenes in Winnipeg, and then we shot all of the Siberia scenes in rural Manitoba, which is the province that Winnipeg is in as a city. And then we went to Siberia itself. To St. Petersburg itself, to Russia, to shoot the exterior St. Petersburg scenes. But everything besides the exterior St. Petersburg scenes were actually shot in Canada.
And it was cold. It's always cold up there.
It got so cold during scouting that Fahrenheit and Celsius were the same temperature.
Oh, my God.
I think that was negative 38 degrees.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That would be difficult to try to do anything in that kind of weather, for sure. What was it like filming in St. Petersburg?
It was wonderful.
It's a beautiful city.
Oh, my. It's astonishing city. Have you been there?
I have not. I've been to Moscow, but not St. Petersburg yet.
Yeah, I was not. I knew it was beautiful. Of course, I'd seen photos and I'd done research, and we were, had a wonderful team on the ground in Russia while we were shooting in Canada, prepping for a while before we arrived. But I was unprepared for the sheer majesty and grandiosity of St. Petersburg.
Wow.
It's kind of like a combination of Venice and Paris, on a much grander scale, as if you're living during a royal period. The Hermitage Museum, all of the rivers and canals. It's one of the more romantic, beautiful, captivating places I've ever seen. And I know Russia's in the news, of course, right now for all these reasons. When we were shooting there, I think it was 3 months after the inauguration. So this stuff was just beginning to really hit the zeitgeist. It was there, but it wasn't as there as it is now. But it was there enough to the fact that when you went, on our day off, when we would travel through the square and go shopping, you'd see mugs with Trump and Putin's face on them together, which I thought was just endlessly funny.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, they had to work really fast to get those out there, didn't they?
Yeah. No, but our Russian crew was just incredible. I loved working with them. The name of the company that we worked with was called Globus Film, and I could not have asked for a more wonderful, hardworking, inspired group of people. So, the question has come up a few times, kind of, what's your statement on Russia versus the United States, or does the film make a comment on it? And, the film does not make a comment on it at all. Well, one of the reasons being is that, Keanu and I met to make this movie a month before the election when, absolutely no one thought that Trump had become president, including Trump, I think. And then, 3 months later, Trump's been president for a couple of weeks, and I'm off to Canada to go prep the film. So while we were, of course, very aware, in some cases painfully aware, I'm not going to, of what was going on back home, there wasn't really the opportunity to inject the kind of social commentary into what was happening there. All I can say is it's kind of like watching the World Cup and watching this underdog Russian team make it all the way to the quarterfinals. I felt like that working with this incredible group of Russians. They worked as hard as I could possibly have asked for a crew to work. They were so passionate, and they stopped at nothing until we got what we needed for the movie. So I had an absolutely wonderful time.
Well, you show it beautifully in the film itself too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do. How long were you there shooting in St. Petersburg?
We weren't there for so long. We shot for a total of 4 days and prepped for, I guess, we were prepping while we were shooting in Winnipeg. So we only got to prep properly, I think, for about 9 or 10 days, which is nothing.
Right.
Before shooting for 4 days. But it was one of those situations where you just had to get lucky with the people that you were working with, because if we didn't have such a wonderful team, there's just, to create, when you make these movies, you're really creating a whole sort of mini functional society and ecosystem from scratch. And that includes hundreds of people. And those things don't come together immediately. You really need to be working with the right people. And if you're working on a very shortened time span, which is what we had for Russia, you need to get lucky. Otherwise, you're really going to be in the weeds. And we had an astonishing group of people to work with over there.
That's great. That makes all the difference in the world on anything you're doing. It's to work with a great group of people. How long was the shoot in total?
A total of 28 days.
Wow. That's pretty short, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
To get all of that
It was
done.
a little bit longer than Frank and Lola, but not by as much as I had initially imagined when somebody said my second film was going to be starring Keanu Reeves. I had, sugar plums dancing in my head about our shooting schedule. It was 24 days in Canada and 4 days in Russia.
Wow, that's not a lot of time to do it. But the movie, now, when is the movie coming out?
It comes out in the U.S. In theaters and on video on demand on July 13th.
Okay. So
it will be available to, rent, buy, download, hopefully on as big a screen as one has available to them, with as good speakers as one has available to them as well. You spend so much time making these movies and spending so much energy on the details that, your worst nightmare is to have somebody watching it on in portrait mode on an iPhone with a pair of earbuds on. So hopefully people will be streaming it to their big screen televisions with a good set of speakers. That's my hope.
I agree. Well, it is a movie. I mean, I say this all the time on the show that movies should be seen in the movie theater.
Agreed.
And where they were meant to be seen. And, then you can always watch them the second time, on your smaller screen. But
exactly.
it is one that, the cinematography is absolutely wonderful in this film. We were talking before we started about composers. So talk a little bit that you felt that composers are the unsung heroes of the movie making industry. So tell us a little bit about the composer for Siberia.
Well, I actually worked with a team of composers, both on Siberia and on my first film, Frank and Lola. Their names are Danny Bensi and Sandra Jurians, and they're a team. They do everything together, and they're just geniuses. When you're working as a director, you have to be able to speak, different people's languages depending on which department that you're dealing with, whether it's, production design, cinematography, editing, or add to your actors. I think that when you're working with composers, it becomes even more. You really have to speak a language of emotion and feeling and intuitiveness, and then it's a real pleasure watching them interpret what your ideas, and then of course asking them to bring their own genius into the equation, which Danny and Sandra certainly have in spades. But to say I want to go something kind of like a combination of Bernard Herrmann meets Tchaikovsky with a little Russian folk music thrown in for good measure, and then
good luck with that.
And it's like go, and then 2 weeks later they come back with something that sounds like a mix of Bernard Herrmann, Tchaikovsky with some Russian folk music thrown in for good measure, plus like a whole other element that you would have never ever dreamed of coming up with that they just did themselves. That's absolutely perfect for the movie. So, I love those guys. I don't know how they do it, but that collaboration is one that I hope to continue for the rest of my career.
It's great. It's good. That's what you hear about a lot with directors, that they kind of form this wonderful core team that they love working with. Spielberg and, many other directors, have this team that they like working with. So it's nice that at the beginning of your career, basically, it's still the beginning of your career, that you're already gathering your team to work with as you move forward. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You're listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. And like The Jan Price Show on Facebook, and check out thejanpriceshow.com. The Yozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Yozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Yozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right. It's Mr. Sandless, the no sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is director Matthew Ross, and we're talking about his brand new movie, called Siberia, starring Keanu Reeves. Matthew, as a director, and you said you grew up watching movies that your mom, good for your mom taking you to all those wonderful films when you were younger, and influenced the direction you wanted to go into. Out of all of that, do you have a director that inspires you, or who has inspired you, that you would love to emulate or are trying to emulate?
Oh, I have many. That I was lucky to be a film journalist before I started making movies for a living. So I got to interview a lot of my heroes, some of whom I still look up to and still find inspiration in. But I mean, certainly the all-time greats, Kubrick, Hitchcock, Kurosawa. I could really go on and on. Robert Altman, Coppola, Michael Mann, Claire Denis is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time.
And
Nicholas
why?
Roeg.
So why? And why? Why is he one of your favorites?
Which one?
Claire Denis.
Well, Claire Denis I love because of her fearlessness in terms of content and genre. And what I love about her movies is that she manages to, create stories that work on multiple genre levels at the same time. There's humor, there's a love story, there's a thriller. All three are happening and sort of playing against each other and interweaving against one another. Her fearless visual style, her fearless narrative style, and certainly her willingness to just take risks in terms of how she chooses to start a scene or end a scene, what we know and don't know about a character, what we to push the realm of likability, the likability factor, into places that might possibly alienate traditional audiences, but also make something much more interesting. It's that kind of fearlessness from directors is something that I've always been very attracted to, and really want to continue to try to do myself as a director. I think that we're living in a very strange period right now in filmmaking history. I think there's a few directors out there that sort of have carte blanche to experiment and play and fail and do what they will and continue to work. But for most people out there, they're being asked to work within a very pitchable, targeted genre that might not be the most inventive kind of genre. And while there's wonderful work being done there, I really I'm very envious of the filmmakers, certainly the American filmmakers of the 1970s, late 60s, and 70s and early 80s. The sort of Easy Riders, Raging Bull generations, where they really got to play, experiment, and even fail on occasion, but come back and try something new. It's so hard to make a good film, and it's even harder to make an interesting one. And sometimes that entails taking risks. And I don't think right now is a time where risk-taking is really very well rewarded. Certainly not the way it used to be. Even back to the days when I was starting out as a film journalist and working as a film journalist in the early 2000s and mid-2000s. It's a different landscape right now. I think that, in large part that's because of this huge influx of money from a lot of streaming companies and just so many people watching movies on at home, is that, a lot of those shows are products of pitches, and you have to sort of pitch something to get it, quote unquote, on the air, even though oftentimes it's not a live channel. But, and it's so hard to get these movies made, to get the money to make them made. And I'd love to see a little bit more freedom, to watch a show like David Lynch coming back with Twin Peaks is just the coolest thing ever. Even if you don't like Twin Peaks, you must appreciate the sheer, I don't give an F quality to Lynch's narrative storytelling in that show. he is beating to his own drum and being able to do that in front of a large audience. And I just think those are the things that we should be seeing more of, not less of.
Right, I agree. So how do you think Amazon and Netflix and all these streaming services are really changing the landscape for filmmaking?
Well, it's completely changing the way these things are experienced. I mean, an essential aspect to me falling in love with movies was watching movies alone in a darkened theater with a bunch of strangers.
Right.
And that's just, outside of, event movies or franchise films, that's so few and far between. And the films that do manage, there's few indies or foreign films that do manage to make that crossover. I applaud them, and, it's a wonderful thing. But then there's also just the mechanics of getting those things set up, It's funny. I'm often asked when I'm, sent a piece of material or presenting a piece of material, bringing material up with producers or with my team, is this a movie or is this a TV show? Is this a short series or is this a mini series? Whereas usually it was much more clear than that. Now these traditional the traditional lines between, what's a film, what's a series, what's an extended series, they're much blurrier, and people have to buy them. The more content that you're trying to get set up, the more money that entails. Game of Thrones is the huge exception to the rule, right? But most of these shows, they fit. You have to be able to explain something in terms of people understand, so that it can get through the process of going from pitch to pilot to series to being seen by audiences. And there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And so, for example, when Cary Fukunaga, who I've known since he was just starting out, was able to do with True Detective what he did with Nick Pizzolatto, I thought that was just a huge breath of fresh air. You're giving a director the reign to direct, what was it, 6 hours of content, unrestrained for the most part. I mean, I'm sure, Cary had to deal with notes and all that kind of stuff, but it really was his show with Nick Pizzolatto. I'd love to see more of those shows, because those are the shows that you look back on and they are the best shows that we've ever seen, whether it's Breaking Bad or The Wire or Mad Men. I mean, those shows for the most part are or The Sopranos or Deadwood. They come from generally the mind of a single creator or key group of creators who are allowed to kind of work in their own universe with the trust of the people above them who are writing the checks. And I just want to see as much of that as possible. The upside being, of course, is that there's just a ton of available financing right now for all of these various viewing platforms to put new content on the air. So it's great in that I have the ability to pitch to way more companies than I would have been able to pitch to 5 to 10 years ago. But, you want to be able to do it in such a way so that you can do something really, truly original.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, interesting. It's a fascinating time for all industries, but particularly the film industry. It's a fascinating time with all the things that are available. You're right. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You are listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like the Jan Price Show on Facebook and check out thejanpriceshow.com.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have the desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled with luxury loungers in every auditorium. Oversized plush recliners are electric-powered reclining seats with extendable footrests, cup holders, and snack tables. Guaranteed comfort with all reserved seating. Reserve the best seat in town online at Cinemark.com or download the Cinemark app today. The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is Matthew Ross, director of the brand new film Siberia, starring Keanu Reeves. What's next for you, Matthew?
I'm working on a number of different things at the moment in both the film and television worlds, but I can't really talk about them quite yet. But stay tuned.
Okay.
I hope to have something that I can talk about pretty soon.
Okay, good. We'll have you back on the show, and we'll talk about that. You have worked in the TV industry also. You worked on the HBO series Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. What was that like?
Well, I would say I worked on Curb Your Enthusiasm as much as I became friends with Larry and threw a couple of ideas at him that he responded to. You know, he's got an operation going there with Curb Your Enthusiasm that is as perfect a comedy situation as one could hope for. And part of that is being very open as all great storytellers and artists are to new ideas. So I was just lucky enough to be able to have his ear at the right moment for some ideas. But Larry is one of the truly awesome figures awesome in the original sense of the term. He's just a titan of comedy and also of artistic integrity. He does. I mean, that show truly is Larry saying, I'm going to do exactly what I'm going to do, and if you have a problem with it, then I just won't do it. You know, that's a very, very enviable and rare position to be in as an artist. And he makes full use of it. I don't think there's any doubt. Certainly in terms of longevity, if you look at that series over its entire run, that it's not the best show in the history of comedy television.
Probably
is. And it's all Larry. He's been a supporter of mine since I first met him, and a friend. And we're both New Yorkers. We both, earned whatever we've had by really working hard, and nothing was handed to either one of us. Neither one of us made it when we were kids, I think. But obviously he's gone on to such just tremendous legendary heights. But he's a real hero of mine, and it's a real honor to have him to be a mentor of sorts, even though he doesn't necessarily really realize it or not. Just his individualism is something that I think every artist should look at for inspiration if they're ever feeling like they can't do it.
What a wonderful mentor to have as Larry David as your mentor. That's wonderful. Which do you prefer working in? Do you prefer working in the television arena, or do you prefer movies, or does it make any difference to you?
Well, so far, I mean, I've directed 2 movies, so I have more experience doing that. I've done some episodic writing for television. I sold a pilot. I'm doing some more work in TV now. I guess the short answer to that question is I'll let you know.
Okay.
But I'm certainly intrigued by making a movie is so hard and requires so much energy, and it's sort of like building, an entire city from scratch and then tearing it down again. So that the idea of working with, instead of an hour and a half or 2 hours of content, 10 to 20 hours of content and beyond is a very attractive thing, to continue something, to keep it going. But that's obviously a very difficult thing to do. But once it works out, that's pretty incredible. I mean, who wouldn't want to be David Steinman making The Wire, or the Game of Thrones group and what they're able to do? I mean, that to keep exploring the universe that you've created cinematically is quite wonderful. Plus, the ability to to view things from home, the technology truly has gotten better. It's not great for movies, but it is great for television.
This is true.
You know, because people can watch, you know, really high quality. You can watch, you know, a 4K monitor with a surround sound speaker at home and have it seem pretty good. It's not as good as watching something in a movie theater, but if compared to, you know, a 20-inch TV set-top box or a VHS tape, you can't compare it.
Right. I agree with you. Matthew, our time is up, but it's been wonderful having you on the show. I look forward to having you back, and I wish you much continued success with your career. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. You've been listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like The Jan Price Show on Facebook, and check out thejanpriceshow.com.